Welcome, brothers. I am Jonathan Chaffin, Gamma Tau 2000. I am your Director of Member Engagement for the Psi Upsilon Foundation. Thank you for joining us again for an installation of our virtual speaker series. We are joined this evening. I'm very excited by Ed Marinaro, Chi 71, Cornell. Brother Ed is a American actor who I've enjoyed in several different roles over the years. We're going to let him introduce himself better than I ever could in just a moment. We'll probably progress chronologically a little bit through Ed's career and then sort of let him take it and share with us thoughts, observations. It's just a general fireside chat. Ed, thank you so much for making yourself available this evening. The speaker series, like everything, is supported, brothers, by your generous donations to the Psi Upsilon Foundation. And if at any point you have questions, comments, or opinions about this series or about other programs from the foundation, feel free to reach out to me at psiu.org or by whatever means that you like. Ed, would you like to tell us about what brought you to Cornell and to Psi?
Well, I was a pretty heavily recruited athlete at my little hometown of New Milford, New Jersey. I was also a basketball player. I probably had 10 basketball scholarships coming out of high school, but I had maybe 40 football scholarships to some, pretty big football schools. My first scholarship offer came from Penn State. And I had a full ride to Duke, William and Mary, Wake Forest. But there was something about getting an Ivy League education. I come from a pretty blue collar, background. And, I always looked up to all the smart kids when I was in high school. And, I was a good student, wasn't a great student, but man, when I started getting recruited by Ivy League schools, I just even at that young age, I knew how that would serve me well in the future. I didn't have I never expected what happened to me athletically to happen. I was, I knew I was a good athlete, but to go on and do what I did at Cornell, and I never imagined that happen. I don't think anybody did. So it was very exciting, but unexpected. And I always look back at my when I look back at my life, my decision to go to Cornell was probably the best thing that I could have ever done, and I did it at a very young age. And I'm probably more proud of that than anything I've done, in my life. And with all due respect, I've done a lot of stuff that was admirable. I've accomplished a lot. I've stayed out of jail. It's Cornell I was in the hotel school at Cornell, which had I not gone into the NFL, I'm sure I would have had, a lot of opportunities in that industry. And some of my best friends from Cornell are guys and girls I went to the hotel school with. They're all very prominent in the industry. There's hardly a place I can't go where I don't get a friends and family rate at a hotel. So it's one of the advantages. But it was a great place. My son is there. He's just finished his junior year. He's going to be a senior. He's on the football team. And I'm very proud of him. He's done really well academically. He's in the ILR school at Cornell. Oh. And unfortunately, the Psi U chapter, as probably some of you know, is no longer exists at Cornell. But he's a fraternity guy, and he's enjoying that. We always had a great Greek system at Cornell. I know we did when I was there. So it was, just a lot of great memories, and I'm proud of what I did as a collegiate. And, I'm hoping I'm sure my son is going to, be successful as he moves on in life. And that Cornell education it's hard to top.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to hang out with some Kai brothers last week at an event in Atlanta, and they were asking some questions centered around getting the chapter active again at Cornell. So I've been looking into that this week with brother Tom Fox, our executive director. We had a question. What was your most memorable non-football experience at Cornell, if you'd like to share one?
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but I had to go back to get my degree after my first year in the NFL. My spring semester, my senior year, I was being, I had a lot of opportunities to go and make appearances. I was no longer an amateur athlete. I pretty much was professional, and I get an opportunity to do public appearances, and I'd make a few $100, which was great at the time. And I took a light load at Cornell. So when I finally, it was my time to graduate, I was short of credits. So I always said I'd go back and get my degree, and so I played my first year in the NFL, and then went back to Cornell in January, which is not the best time to be at Cornell. I was driving a purple Porsche, and I had a few bucks in my pocket. I was pretty well known up there. They wouldn't let me drive my car on campus, so I had to walk to class every day. I stayed with my college roommate from the year before, who was a junior. Now he was a senior, and I literally slept in a closet for 3 months. He had a apartment off campus, and it had like a big walk-in closet, and we put a bed in there, and that's where I slept for 3 months. But that was really kind of a very interesting time in my life to having to go to class. I mean, I really didn't. My mother. I almost dropped out. I almost said, I can't do this. This is I'm a professional football player, and I'm up here schlepping to class every day in the snow. And I said, I didn't think I was going to finish. And she said, you told everybody all through your career, you chose Cornell because you wanted to get an education. She said, you get your diploma. You'll trust me, you'll be happy you did. So I did. I got my diploma. And again, that was one of the moments I'll remember most. I was training in New Jersey, and I was at my mother's house, and she said, you got a package at the post office. So I went to the post office, and I got there. I just had finished training. I was sweaty. I go in the post office, and I get this little tube, and I open the tube and pull out my diploma from Cornell University. It still has sweat spots on it from when I was sweating on it. And I remember that moment was I was so proud, just by myself. And yeah, it was something that when I look back, I'm so glad I did it, because I really would have hated to spend the rest of my life saying, yeah, I went to Cornell, but I didn't graduate. So that was a proud moment for me, unrelated to sports, but when I think of Cornell.
When you think back to Psi U at that time, were a lot of was the house a very athletic house? Was it, did you sort of join through getting into the athletic program, or did you run into the brothers another way?
Well, we weren't a football house, but we were a bit of a jock house. We had a lot of basketball players in the fraternity, and several football players, some of my teammates. But we also had this kind of cool little vibe, because we had some pretty distinguished alumni legacies, if you will. And I know you mentioned it article. Peter Kors was a senior when I was a freshman, and then I was pretty impressed. Peter was just a great guy, you know, and very supportive of the fraternity. And we have a center at Cornell called Noise Center, and Jay Noyes was in the fraternity, and that kind of impressed me. Then we had football players, and you know, the house itself was really a cool place. The house, it was beautiful. In fact, we had a squash court in the bottom in the basement, which was kind of neat. You know, and I joined. These guys were kind of nice to me, even though when I was a freshman, I worked in the kitchen, and I would serve when they had a party weekend. I would be serving, you know, everybody in the dining room, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, when I look back at Psi U, these guys were very supportive of me. You know, when I was playing football, I was getting a lot of attention, and they were, you know, very supportive of me and proud of me and happy for me. And I still have so many Psi U's that are still very friendly with. We just had a kind of a mini reunion up in Ithaca this past football season. We had probably 20 guys from my era, which was great. You know, and I keep in touch with a lot of them regularly. So, you know, Psi U was a really an important part of my whole college experience, and yeah, I'm very proud of having been a member, and proud of all my friends who've gone on to do some really great things. And that's I don't know if everybody can say that about their fraternity experience, but mine was as good as it gets. Yeah, well, that's kind of a bond, you know, that it's, you know, I have friends that I go back to kindergarten with. My oldest friend in the world, we met when we were in kindergarten. We were 6 years old, and we're still friends. You know, he doesn't live where I live, and we mostly talk on the phone. Haven't seen him in a while, but we're all, you know, I'll talk to him frequently. Um, and then I have my high school friends, and you know, it's just a different kind of relationship. It's based on longevity, and when you're a dumb little kid, you know, experimenting, doing crazy stuff in high school, and then when you go to college, the what's the word? The quality of your friendships become more meaningful. I mean, like, you know, just in high school, you don't have a lot of choices of who your friends are going to be. When you go to college, I mean, you have like, you know, 17,000 students. So the people that stay with you for, you know, into your adulthood, and when you get out of there, are, you know, they're very special. It's a very special bond. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's very I guess you could say it's just more mature. It's a more mature friendship based on, you know, more meaningful qualities, if you will. It's not to say that my friends from high school
yeah,
anything lesser, but it's just they're just different. And that's wonderful. That's the way it should be. Everybody, you know, not everybody's the same. You can't treat everybody or think of everybody the same. Everybody has a different function in your life. You know, I'm sure I have a different function in all their lives, you know.
yeah. Well, to pivot a minute, let's so we've talked about college ball a little bit. How about pro ball? You mentioned your purple car. Like, what was that like playing pro?
You know, it's funny. I've had two pretty successful careers, you know, as an NFL player. I mean, I played longer than most. I played 6 years, and I would have played longer, but I got injured. And you know, I had to overcome um, certain stigmas. Being an Ivy League football player, going into the NFL, people they just doubted me, constantly. I felt this like, I mean, they weren't used to having an Ivy League guy with them, there were times I didn't don't they looked at me like I had two heads, they didn't quite know how to relate to me. They thought I was really smart just because I was an Ivy League guy. I never claimed to be smart, but that's the perception, when you're playing, you go to an NFL team, and these guys are all great college players and scholarship players, and I didn't have a football scholarship to Cornell, so I was looked at as being just different. So I had to overcome that. I mean, for 6 years in the NFL, every year I had to beat out somebody to keep my spot on the roster. I mean, they were bringing in every year. We would keep in Minnesota. I think we kept 5 running backs, and when we go to training camp, there'd be 12. And they all these young studs, and every year I beat them out somehow. And I didn't think about it at the time, but when I look back at it, I mean, wow, that must have been pretty good, better than I thought it was, but. That was a real challenge. It was a challenge that I just never looked at as a challenge. I just said, I'm here. I'm the guy. And then I went to Hollywood, and I faced the same sort of skepticism that I got when I was going to the NFL. I mean, here I am, a jock, professional athlete, trying to be an actor in Hollywood. And people kind of, they weren't always accepting to that. Actors, that community likes to think that they're very special, and like it's harder to be an actor than it really is. It's not hard to be an actor. Anybody with a pulse can call themselves an actor. Making money as an actor is a whole different thing. But anybody can call themselves an actor. Not everybody can call themselves an NFL football player. But sports at that level are the true meritocracy. They don't, it doesn't matter who your father is. It doesn't matter if you're good looking or you're ugly. You just got to be really good at it, or you don't last in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of something that I had to adjust to when I went to Hollywood, because I was, NFL, you have to have a certain amount of luck to play a sport. You don't get hurt. You got to be with the right team, whatever. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the talent, you're not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And Hollywood is it's not like that at all. And I had to kind of get my head around that, and just understand that it's very subjective, and sports are not subjective. Like I said, either you're not. So I had to make that kind of adjustment, early on. I wasn't getting roles, going up and auditioning for stuff, and I wasn't getting them. Then I realized, it has nothing to do with if you're good or bad. You might remind this casting director of an old boyfriend who broke up with her, broke her heart, so you're not going to get the part. So, it's been a really interesting journey that I am very proud of my success. When I'm at the stage in my life where I'm oftentimes like this, I'm asked to reflect on what I've done, and it makes me more. You get a little more introspective. I think anybody, when you get to this point in life, they're I got a great life. I got a great wife, I got a great son, I live in a great place, I have great friends, I have my health. And, I'm kind of thankful for those basic stuff now. And then, when you're younger, your priorities are different. And I think when you get to this stage in your life, you just start to appreciate things. You don't take things for granted. And it's not that it's not challenging, because your mortality is something you're reminded of, almost every day. Because I see people who I grew up admiring, athletes. I see actors and actresses I worked with who are passing away, who are dying.
Mm.
So that takes that's a little gut punch every time that happens. And again, it's a reminder that you have a mortality. So enjoy life now. And I've been pretty lucky. I don't plan on going anywhere real soon, but
Yeah.
I think it just makes you focus on what's important in your life. And I think you have to get to a certain point in your life, where I am, where you start to, when I was in my 30s or 40s, I never thought about dying. But in my age, you think about it.
When you and I were talking earlier, the kind of one of your first big breaks was actually at Laverne and Shirley. How did you make the decision to go out to Hollywood, and how'd you go from there to Laverne and Shirley to Hill Street Blues?
Oh, you're talking about a big time span there.
Yeah,
I was Joe Namath was a good friend of mine, still is a good friend of mine.
Okay.
We met when I was a senior at Cornell at the College Football Hall of Fame dinner. I was invited by a couple of Cornell people, and I went there, and it was a black tie, a very big deal. I was a senior, I'm coming off a really big, college career. And I get a tap on the shoulder, and I turn around, it's Joe Namath. And I was awestruck. And he ended up asking me through his lawyer to be an instructor at his football camp, the Joe Namath football camp. It was up in Vermont. The first year they did it, asked me to be an instructor. So I said, sure. I went up there, and I'd work with these kids, and then Joe and I, all the other guys who were there, we'd work out a little bit, catch passes and stuff. And we just became like pretty good friends. He's like a big brother to me. So over the years during my career, we ended up, during the off season, I go down and see him. He lived in Fort Lauderdale. I go down, we go fishing, we golf and hang out and have a great time. And I learned a lot from him as far as how to deal with the media. Not that I'm comparing myself to Joe Namath, but you still, whatever level, if you're in the NFL, you got to learn how to be humble and whatever. So I spent some time with him out in Los Angeles. He was doing movies and stuff, and I met some people, and they reached out to me to see if I wanted to, if I would do a screen test for. I don't know if you remember a show called The $6 Million Man. And the star was a guy named Lee Majors, who I ended up doing a movie with years later. But anyway, he was like threatening to leave the show, and they were bringing in people to possibly replace him. So they flew me to LA, and I did a screen test for the $6 Million Man. I signed a contract that if I got the role, this is what I would get. And the contract was literally 10 times more than I made in the NFL. And I looked at this, I said, wow. I said, if one person in Hollywood, and this is a big company that was asking me to do this, if one person thought I could do this, let's give it a shot. So I didn't get the part, obviously, but that off season, I went to LA and I got into an acting class, and I studied for a couple of months. And then that was the year I went back and I played for the the Jets. I became a free agent and signed with the Jets, and Joe was the quarterback. So that was great. And I got into an acting class in New York. And I would go once a week, and it was New York actors, which were very different than Los Angeles actors at the time. So I went to this class once a week, and then I got injured. And when I got injured, I kind of put the whole acting thing, on the back burner. I focused on getting healthy. I had a foot injury, getting healthy, and whatever. Then I went back that next year, not fully recovered with the Jets, and I got released. And then the next year I got signed by the Chicago Bears. I went to training camp with them, and they released me right at the end of training camp. And then I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. I'm gonna go to Hollywood and be an actor. So I flew out there, and I was lucky because I had an agent, which is, for a new actor. I had done a couple of small things, and I did some commercials. I had my Screen Actors Guild card, and I had an agent, which are two things that are really hard for a new actor to get. If you want to be an actor, that's the biggest challenge, And you can't get your SAG card unless you get a job. It's hard to get a job unless you have an agent. So it's very tricky how that happens. But so it was easier for me. So I just I hung out for several months, and then I was making a mental transition from football to being done with football. Sports football was like my my identity for a long time, and making that emotional adjustment was hard. It was for part of the time I was sort of hoping somebody would call me and want me to come back, and I did get one inquiry that didn't turn out, but and then when I finally knew it was over, I really got committed, and I got another really good acting class, and with some really good professional actors, and I was all in. I was all in, and I heard about this role of Laverne and Shirley from a girl in my acting class, and I told my agent at the time to get me in on it, and I went in, and I got the part. It was a guest starring role on Laverne and Shirley, and it was all of a sudden things start happening, and I got a pilot to do a TV series, that pilot season that didn't get picked up. But then Laverne and Shirley came back and offered me another role, different role than the one I played in guest starring thing. So I two different roles, totally different, and I did 11 episodes of Laverne and Shirley, which is like the first half of the season, and they fired me. So I was devastated at the time. I mean, I had a good gig. I was making, really good money. They just called me and said they weren't. It was sort of the end of the show. Laverne and Shirley was the top show, but this was sort of the, they weren't. They were going to They did get canceled, right after that. But so I was out of work, and then I. Just by happenstance, I was at the studio and auditioning for a role in a TV movie, and I run into someone in my acting class who's going over to the casting office for Hill Street Blues. So before I went for this audition, my agent said, when you're over at the studio, you should stop. I want you to stop by and say hello to the people who cast Hill Street Blues. So I said, okay. So I run in, I'm walking into the studio and I run into a friend who's in my acting class and he's going over to Hill Street Blues. So where I was supposed to go, it was a TV movie about male strippers. And that's where I was supposed to go, but I went over to Hill Street Blues first before I went over to this other meeting. And I went up to the receptionist and I told them, you know, my name's Ed Marinaro. My agent said to come by and say hello to Jerry Windsor, who was the casting director for Hill Street Blues. So I'm in this room with all these other actors, and this Jerry Windsor walks in. I thought Jerry Windsor was a man, and it was a woman. This shows you how serendipitous life can be. You know, I look back, there were moments in my life that could have gone, you know, in a total different direction. It would have changed my whole life. And this was the moment that probably changed my life more than anything. So I see Jerry Windsor. She's walking toward me, and I said, Jerry, you know, Ed Marinaro, my agent said the same. And she says to me, she goes, look, Ed, I have to audition these other guys. Have your agent call me and we'll reschedule it for another day. I said, no problem. So she leaves. And I was, you know, sort of talking to this friend of mine and, you know, a little embarrassed. And then I hear a voice calling me, you know, Ed, Ed. So I see, and there's Jerry Windsor standing there, but she goes, come here. She said, you know, we have a role in this next, in Hill Street, that goes for 4 episodes. She said, you die at the 4th episode, but it's 4 episodes. And would you audition for it? I said, yeah, you know. So she says, okay, let me take care of all these other people. And here's the script, go, you know, work on it and then come in, you know, and read. So I went outside, I sat on the steps and I read the thing. And then finally, you know, an hour later, I go in there and, you know, all the writers, producers, there were like 10 people in the room. And I read for this part of Joe Coffey, Hill Street Blues. And, you know, they knew who I was, you know, they mentioned football and whatever. So I read for this part and you know, they sort of were laughing a little bit because I don't think they expected me to be as good as I was. And they said, would you try this again? But here, do this, and you know, giving me direction. And you know, I've come to realize when they ask you to read it again, it's because you know you got a shot. They like you. So I read it again, and I'll never forget. I got up and said, "Thank you very much," and I walked out. And I remember driving home. I had a little cell phone, one of those with the wires on it that was in my console. I called my agent. I said, John, I read for Hill Street Blues, and I guarantee you I got the part. And sure enough, a couple hours later, they call and they offer me the role. 4 episodes. I'm supposed to, and then I die in the final episode. So I did these episodes, and the day that my death scene, you know, I'm on the set, and you know, I knew scene. I pull over a car, and I walk up to the car, and the license registration, a shotgun comes out, and boom, blows me away, boom. So I get to this set that day, and I go to my dressing room, and on my desk in the dressing room was a new script. And you know, they would make changes every day, and the changes would be different colors. The script would come out and be all white. But then if they changed it, it would be blue. Then the next day, the more changes would be yellow, and then there'd be green. So anyway, so I get this script on my desk, and I just said, wow. And I took the script and I went right to the end where my character gets killed. And they're in the station house, and one guy says, how's everybody doing? And we go, well, every time we lose a guy, it's hard. That was the original script. Then I look at this new one, the last page. How's everybody doing? And well, we're still waiting. How Coffee's doing it. He's at the hospital. So I went, woohoo. So I go out to shoot the scene, and we shoot it two different ways. We shoot it where I have a stunt man, they have a chain on him, and they whip him back, and he flies back when he gets hit with the shotgun. And then they have me, where when the guy pulls the shotgun up, I do this, and I take it under the arm, right? So Stephen Bochco, the creator and executive producer, great guy, he's on the set that day, and he says to me, he goes, just want you to know that the life of Joe Coffey, your character, is in the hands of your agent right now. So needless to say, I got the part, and I did 6 years. It was probably the greatest break that someone who had my limited experience at the time could get, because I was on this critically acclaimed show that had incredible writing, incredible actors. It was, I didn't deserve it because I didn't have enough experience, but I fit in, and it was, I suppose you could say it was kind of launched my career. I've been doing this for 45 years, and I think that sort of gave me credibility that I probably wouldn't have had. So I'm very proud of my work that I did on that show, and still have good friends from the show I talk to. So
Wonderful. So I know got some questions as well about Blue Mountain State, but what are some of the highlights between the end of Hill Street Blues and Marty Daniels, aside from the Miller commercials? What are some of the things we should go send our brothers out to go dig up at Netflix and Amazon Prime? And
boy, I did some really crazy stuff. Of course, you all remember when I played Joey Buttafuoco in the Amy Fisher story. That was that was fun. It's the first time I ever played a character who was still alive. I did a show called Sisters, which I did for 4 years. It was a real chick show, and yeah, that was a good gig. I did a little stint on Dynasty. I did a stint on Falcon Crest, which was cool because we would shoot the exteriors of Falcon Crest up in Napa Valley. So we would all fly up there, and we stayed at the Silverado Inn, which was a beautiful hotel, had 2 golf courses and great restaurants. So it was very cool. We were up there for like 2.5 weeks. That was fun. And I did movies. I shot movies in London, France, Budapest, Hungary. That was I'm not a world traveler, and if it wasn't for my acting, I probably would have never left the States. But I got to go to some fun places. I shot, obviously, if you're an actor in the United States, you're going to shoot up in Canada, which I did. And that's where I did Blue Mountain State, up in Montreal.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I had some. I mean, I'm lucky. I probably did, I don't know, maybe 20 TV movies where I was always the boyfriend. Back in the 80s, there were these. A lot of the movies were women in peril.
Hmm.
And I was always the boyfriend. I was either the understanding boyfriend or the jerk boyfriend. And I'd always have the same line, the same version of a line in almost every movie I did. I would look at the girl and I would say, "Don't you think you're being a little hard on yourself?" And I mastered that line. I got hired a bunch of times just because I could say that. Be sincere.
How from there to Blue Mountain State?
Yeah, well, Blue Mountain State was like a gift that just keeps giving. It's I was, I mean, I was at a down time in my career, not a whole lot happening, and I got to audition for this role of the coach on Blue Mountain State. Little did I know it would turn out to be this cult hit. And yeah, I mean, it was really fun because my football background. I think that probably had something to do with them hiring me. I can do some technical advisor, but it was. I don't know if you've ever seen the show. It is
Oh, I love the show.
it is so clever when you think about how when you look at it now, like a lot of the stuff they probably couldn't have gone away with because that show was done in 2010 and we were on for 3 years and it was very funny. It was funny stuff. And it sort of resonated with the whole generation. And then it became when it got canceled and it went to Netflix, it's when it really sort of took off because these kids who couldn't watch it when it was on Spike TV 9:30 on Tuesday night. And it was before streaming and Netflix, and then it went to Netflix, and these kids were binge watching it in college and crazy stuff. In fact, it's been leaked that we are in the process of doing a reboot of the show. Which is pretty exciting. Wouldn't happen for a while, but they've been talking to us about doing it again, and I think it would be with college football now and the state of college football. There's so much stuff that we could have fun doing. Making fun of, with the NIL money and the transfer portal, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. These college guys driving around in Lamborghinis. It would be hysterical. It would be a real, a testament to what's going on in college football. I think it'll be very funny. It could be hysterical. And we got the same writers who are going to do it. And I think they're great, very talented, and but we'll see. It's exciting. It's exciting, but at the same time, the idea of work is more exciting than actually having to do it.
Sure.
I mean, if I do it, it's in fact, if we do it, we're going to shoot it in Atlanta.
Huh, sure.
Yeah, because we probably wouldn't do it till this coming winter.
Mhm.
We couldn't go up to Montreal again. I loved Montreal. Montreal was fabulous, but it'd be wintertime up there. So we're working on it. Everybody seems to be optimistic. I think they've made a deal with Amazon Prime, which would be cool. So, but it's Hollywood and things can turn upside down in a second. So I'm kind of managing my expectations. I'm not
Sure.
not selling my house and buying a mansion.
Sure. Whenever I see Alan Richson in Reacher, I chuckle about it because I'm used to him as Thad. I can't get that. That was such a good portrayal. I can't get that out of my head when I see him doing more serious. Actually, he sells it. He does a very good job.
Yeah, he was, Alan is a super talented person. And what he did with that character, with that, I don't think other people would have done that. How what he did was phenomenal. I mean, he made that character. He was the breakout character on the show. I mean, I think that he was the biggest part of what made that show successful. People loved him, and he made some choices as an actor in that were amazing. I mean, I mean, I had trouble working with him because I couldn't stop laughing. You know, if I had to do a scene with him, and this Reacher is a whole different thing. But I think I got to know Alan pretty well. I think he likes comedy. I think that's his. He's such a good-looking guy, and good-looking guys being that funny are rare, and so I think he likes to take advantage of that. So that's why I think we're gonna, this whole reboot will happen.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm very excited to hear that. I hadn't heard that yet.
Yeah, no, somebody, it got leaked.
Yeah.
If you search Google Blue Mountain State, you probably see where it was sort of announced. So
Yeah. Real quick before we go, I want to be respectful of your time, and we're getting towards the end of the time I warned you about. So, but before I do a little bit of housekeeping at the end of the show, I wanted to ask, are there any philanthropies or charities or projects that you've got that are not acting that you want to talk about for just a minute?
I do a lot of charity, appearances for different causes, but I think the one that I've consistently been involved in is cystic fibrosis. I host a fishing tournament down in Boca Grande, Florida, every year, and we raise money for cystic fibrosis. I've been doing it for probably 30 years, and it's a great event. The people, we stay at the Gasparilla Inn in Boca Grande, Florida, and we get a great turnout. We make, a nice chunk of money for cystic fibrosis. I got involved in 1990. This veteran fishing guide's daughter had cystic fibrosis. She was 13 years old, and her life expectancy was maybe 21, and now she's 40 years old. And I'm glad that I could be part of that. It's a very small part, but they've made a lot of breakthroughs medically for cystic fibrosis, where life expectancy is greater, as I said. So, but I've been doing that. But again, I do stuff here in Charleston. I do stuff for the Charleston Police Department. You know, community outreach type stuff, and I try to get involved. People come to me doing a lot of stuff, so I can only do so many things. But I try to pick and choose. I support Cornell football.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. So basically, I'm going to ask you one question for you to think on for a minute while I go through the end of our show notes. We'll come back to you, see if you have any answers for it. And that is, just think on, have there any time you've worked with somebody professionally or in your personal life who you didn't find out was a Psi U brother until much later? So I'm just going to let you think on that for a minute. And brothers, rather than switch back to our slide deck, I just want to run through some upcoming opportunities for engagement with you. We are having the 180th Psi Upsilon convention in Boston, Massachusetts at the end of July. The awards banquet will be moved to Saturday night, breaking with tradition over the last couple of years, so that alumni can come and attend. I'm given to understand some brothers will be playing golf on Sunday. Which brings me to my next point. In September 21st, at the Tuxedo Club in New York State, we're having the all Psi Upsilon golf outing. So there are foursomes reserved up at the Tuxedo Club in New York. You can find details at psiu.org. The Gilrain Economic Symposium is in December. It will be the 5th Economic Symposium, and that is in Greenwich, Connecticut. And the Social Impact Fellowship Retreat and Reception is January 5th in Washington, D.C., Alexandria, Virginia, specifically. All of these events and programs are detailed and highlighted on psiu.org and are all supported by your generous donations to the foundation. Every gift to the Psi Foundation is as a 501c3 is tax deductible. And you can see details or make a gift at psiu.org/foundation gift. That's the end of our show notes. And so, and of course, I can be reached at jonathan@psiu.org at any time for any reason. What do you think, Ed? Have you run into any people who identified as brothers, or you found out were brothers later?
You know, Jonathan, I probably have, but I can't remember. I can't remember my wife's name sometimes, so I'm hitting the head a bunch of times. No, you know, I feel kind of bad, and I hope that we can get Psi back at Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anything I can do, let me know. But I think that sort of, affected the whole experience a little bit. I wish I could go up there. I go up there, like I said, my son's up there, and I wish I could stop by the house and see new young brothers, but unfortunately that's not the case. So that I think I feel bad about that. I'm sure a lot of my contemporaries feel the same way. So any way we can make that happen would be great.
Well, I'll tell you what, brother, I will schedule a follow-up call with you on that topic and just kind of go about some of the stuff I looked up for these other Atlanta brothers last week.
Perfect.
Well, all right. I would also like to commend you because the thing that put you on my radar was a note that said that you wrote congratulations to the Tau Epsilon chapter at Clemson when they started a bunch of years ago. I ran across that in my work for the History and Archives Committee, and that was very cool. It was a very classy thing to do.
Well, I'm a proud Psi guy, and like I said, it was probably as big of a influence on me at Cornell as anything else. My Psi experience, the brothers that I met and have known for all these years, who I feel that bond with. I mean, it was it was a big part of my whole college experience from the time I was a freshman in college, 18 years old till now. So there's a lot of value to that, and I had my Cornell football team friends, guys on football, but I also had my fraternity friends. I had my classmates, and I think that the fraternity is the one area where it kind of brought all of that together. I mean, that was my strongest, maybe even a little more than football. It was my fraternity was my strongest bonds I had. Many of which were guys that were on the football team, so that made it even more special. But it's I mean, I'm 100% into the Greek system. I think it's a great idea. Over the years you hear so many people being critical of it, and I'm not one of them. I think it's when you go to a place like Cornell with 17,000 people, it's nice to have a kind of some place you can look to when you need help, friendship, meaningful friendship, and support. And I got that from my fraternity brothers when I was going through some really exciting time in my life, but it was also very hectic, and I needed somebody to keep me grounded, and my frat brothers did that. So
Wonderful. Well, Ed, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been a wonderful time. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm going to go dig up some of those movies from the 80s and 90s you mentioned, and look forward to see what's next for Thadland and Blue Mountain State.
I hope so. I hope it happens. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Well, all the best to you, brother. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
John, thank you. Nice talking. Hello to everybody. And you get down to Charleston, let me know. I'm here.
All right.